I paid my brother and his wife's rent for 10 months while they criticized me behind my back. He's cheap, Jake said to our parents later. When I found out about it, at first I thought I was doing the right thing. My brother Jake had just gotten out of prison, and his life was in shambles. No one would hire him. Friends had drifted away, and our parents, they just refused to help. My dad said, "He stole, he suffers," like it was that simple. My mom wouldn't even let him in the house. He wasn't her responsibility anymore. But Jake had a wife, Sarah, and a 6-month-old baby. No matter how I felt about what he'd done, I couldn't sit back and watch them struggle. So I stepped up. For 10 months, I paid their rent $1,500 a month out of my own pocket. It wasn't easy. I had my own life, my own bills. But I told myself it was temporary, just until Jake got back on his feet. And at first, he seemed grateful. Every month I got a TX. I appreciate it, man, or I don't know what we'd do without you. But that was it. No real thank you. No, hey, let's have dinner, I owe you one. Just those dry, obligatory texts when the money hit his account. Still, I ignored them. He was going through a hard time. I didn't do it for praise. I did it because I thought it was the right thing to do. Then, a year after I stopped paying, I was at my parents' house for dinner, just a normal night. We were eating, talking about nothing, when my dad suddenly said, "You know, Jake always called you cheap, right?" I froze in mid-bite. "What?" "Yeah," he said, still concentrating on his plate like it was nothing. He said you barely gave him enough to survive. Said you acted like you saved his life when you were just throwing him scraps. I actually laughed, thinking he must be joking. Jake said that? My mom nodded like it was old news. Many times. I put down my fork. My heart was pounding, but I kept a straight face. "And when exactly were you going to tell me?" My dad shrugged. "We thought you knew." I sat there, gripping the table, replaying every time I sent him money every month. I made sure his wife and child had a home while he sat there talking trash behind my back, calling me cheap, like I owed him more, like I hadn't done more than enough. I should have been done with him right then and there. I should have cut him off, blocked his number, and moved on. But I didn't, because I had no idea this was just the beginning. I barely touched my food after that. I replayed what my parents had said over and over in my head. Jake called me cheap. He sat there bad-mouthing me to our parents when I was the only one helping him. I should have known then that he hadn't changed, that he was the same selfish, entitled person he had always been. But I wasn't done with him. That night, I texted him no anger, no accusations, just, "Hey, how's it going?" I wanted to see how he'd react, if he'd act like nothing was wrong. And sure enough, he did. "All good, man, just been busy. Hope you're okay." I stared at the message, no mention of me helping him for almost a year. No. "Hey, thanks again for everything you did for us." Nothing. I took a breath, deleted the chat, and told myself I was done. And I thought I was until 2 months later, when I got a call from my bank about a loan I never took out. "Hi, Mr. Carter. We're following up on your recent loan application. We need to verify some details before we can give you final approval." I frowned. "Loan?" I didn't apply for a loan. There was a pause. Then the woman on the phone said, "Sir, we have an application under your name for $20,000, signed with your social security number." My stomach dropped. I pulled up my bank account while still on the phone. Nothing was missing, but that didn't mean much. Someone had applied for a major loan in my name, one of those high-interest loans desperate people take out when they can't get money anywhere else. I knew exactly who it was. "Send me a copy of the application," I told the woman. "Now." She emailed it over, and when I opened it, my worst suspicions were confirmed. The signature at the bottom, it was mine, but it wasn't mine. A sloppy attempt at forgery. Jake. I sat there, my heart pounding. He had used my name to try to take 20 grand behind my back after all I had done for him. I called him right away. He didn't pick up. I texted him, "Call me now." No reply. I was dialing again when my phone buzzed with a text from his wife. Sarah, please don't be mad. Just let me explain. I stared at the message, squeezing my phone so hard my fingers hurt. Explain? What was there to explain? I didn't text Sarah back. I didn't care what she had to say. I called Jake, and this time he actually answered. Hey man, did you really think I wouldn't find out? My voice shook with anger. You stole my identity. You forged my signature and tried to withdraw $20,000 in my name. Dead silence. Did you really think I wouldn't notice a loan in my name? I was pacing now, trying to stay calm, but my blood was boiling. What were you planning, Jake? Max out the money and disappear? Leave me to deal with the debt? No, it's not like that. Then explain it to me, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you just committed felony fraud against the only person in this family who still gave a damn about you. I was going to pay you back. I actually laughed. With what? You don't have a job, Jake. You have no income, no savings, no plan. So don't stand there and lie to me. I just needed time, okay? I was desperate. Sarah and I cut him off. Oh, so Sarah knew about this too? Great, even better. You two really sat there and cheated me behind my back after I paid your damn rent for 10 months. He started to stammer again, but I wasn't done. I'm reporting this, you know that, right? That's when the panic hit. No, listen, just give me a chance to fix this. Fix this? You can't fix this, you idiot. This is fraud. You're going back to jail. The line went silent. Then, in a barely audible voice, he muttered, You wouldn't do that. You really want to test me? I spat. I hung up the phone before he could say another word. Within seconds, my phone exploded, Jake, Sarah, both of them spamming me with calls and messages. I ignored them, already looking up how to report identity theft, when a long text from Sarah popped up. Michael, please don't report this. It wasn't just Jake, it was me too. We were desperate. We thought we could take out the loan, pay off some debts, and get the money back before you even noticed. I froze. She was in on it too. Another message popped up. I'll do anything, just don't send him back to jail. Before I could process that, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my mom. I answered, expecting her to be angry with Jake. Instead, she sounded mad at me. What the hell are you doing? I blinked. What? We just got off the phone with Jake. He said you're threatening to send him to jail for a mistake. I almost dropped my phone. A mistake? He committed identity theft, Mom. He tried to steal 20 grand from me. And what good is sending him back to jail? She snapped. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You and Dad refused to give him a dime. You said he deserved to fight. But now that I'm the one he screwed over, you're taking his side? He's your brother, Michael, and he's a damn criminal. He has a family, a wife, and a baby. Yeah, and whose fault is it that he put them in this situation? My mother continued to speak, but I didn't hear a word she said because, at that very moment, my doorbell rang. I looked at the security camera. It was my parents, and they looked angry. I stared at the feed of my parents standing on my front porch, my mother pacing, my father standing stiffly with his arms crossed. They didn't just look angry, they looked ready for war. I yanked the door open before they could even knock. You better be here to tell me you're on my side, I said. My mother pushed past me into the house like she owned the place. What's wrong with you, Michael? The first closed the door and turned to face her. Oh, I don't know, Mom. Maybe the fact that your other son tried to steal 20 grand from me? Maybe the fact that the only reason you even care is because he's whining to you about it instead of admitting it like a damn adult? Jake made a mistake, she snapped. I let out a bitter laugh. A mistake is forgetting to pay someone back. This is felony fraud. My dad finally spoke up. He was desperate. You don't kick a man when he's down, Michael. The first looked at him as if he had grown 3 heads. That's funny coming from you. Weren't you the one who said, he stole, he suffers? Wasn't it you who refused to give him a penny when he got out of prison? He didn't say anything. He just clenched his jaw. I scoffed. So let me get this straight. If you refuse to help him, he deserves it. But if I refuse to let him commit fraud under my name, I'm the bad guy? My mother sighed as if I was being unreasonable. We're family. Exactly, I snapped. And maybe Jake should have remembered that before he screwed me over. Then my dad did something that really shocked me. He pulled an envelope out of his jacket and tossed it on my coffee table. That's 10 grand, he said. I frowned. So drop it. Don't report him. Take the money and let him go. I actually laughed. You think you can bribe me to forgive this? Call it what you want, he said, but I will not let you send my son back to prison. I stared at him. My son! He didn't say anything, but the message was clear. Jake was his son, and I wasn't. I shook my head. Unbelievable. I grabbed the envelope and shoved it back into his hands. Keep your money. I don't want anything from you. My mother's eyes went wide. Michael, please. No, I said, stepping back. Jake had one person left who still believed in him, me, and look what he did. He burned that bridge. I pointed at the door. Now get out. My dad didn't even hesitate. He turned and walked out. My mom looked like she wanted to say something, but I shook my head. I mean it, Mom. Go. She sighed, gave me one last pleading look, and followed my father out. I locked the door behind them, exhaled, and leaned against the wall. My head was pounding. My own parents had just tried to pay me off to protect the brother who stole from me, and as angry as I was, I had no idea the worst was yet to come. The next morning, I got a call from the police. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was Jake's smug, lying face. My parents trying to buy me off like some idiot, the sheer audacity of it all. I woke up when my phone rang. Unknown number? Normally I wouldn't answer it, but something in my gut told me to pick it up. Is this Michael Carter? The voice was serious, official. Yes. Who's this? This is Officer Reynolds from the Metro Police Department. We need you to come down to the station for questioning. I shot up in bed. Questioning? For what? We received a report that you were involved in an identity fraud scheme. We'd like to ask you some questions. I blinked, my mind short-circuited. Wait, you think I'm the one who committed fraud? We can discuss that when you arrive, sir. Are you available this morning? I gripped the phone so tightly my hand hurt. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I dressed so quickly I barely remembered what I put on. My thoughts were racing. This was Jake. This had to be Jake, but I didn't understand. Why would he report me? The moment I entered the station, I saw him. He was sitting in the waiting area with Sarah by his side, fake concern plastered all over their faces. I walked right up to him. Are you out of your mind? Before he could answer, an officer stepped in. Mr. Carter, this way, please. I followed them into a small room and sat across from a detective. He had a file in front of him with my name on it. I crossed my arms, trying to keep my cool. Okay, I said. Tell me exactly what Jake told you. The detective leaned back. We got a report that you took out several loans in Jake's name and tried to pin it on him. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. So let me get this straight. He commits identity fraud against me, and when I don't roll over, he tries to pin the whole thing on me. The detective raised an eyebrow. So you're saying he's lying? Obviously. I leaned forward. I have proof. The bank called me directly about the loan in my name. I have emails. I have documents. You want to see a copy of the forged signature? It's the worst forgery you'll ever see. I pulled out my phone, opened the email from the bank, and slid it across the table. The detective studied it, then he frowned. You got this straight from the bank? Yes, he nodded. All right, stay put. He left the room, and I sat there tapping my foot, feeling like I was about to explode. I wasn't even surprised that Jake pulled this off. What shocked me was how quickly he moved. The second he realized I wasn't backing down, he flipped the script and ran straight to the cops. 20 minutes later, the detective returned. This time, he wasn't alone, another officer was with him, and the moment they sat down, I saw it, the change in their faces. Jake had just screwed himself. "Mr. Carter," the detective said, "looks like your brother left out some important details." I leaned back. "Yeah, what a shocker," he exhaled. "Based on what we've reviewed, it's clear that you're the victim here. Jake Carter and Sarah Carter are now under investigation for identity fraud, attempted loan fraud, and filing a false police report." I grinned. "Fine! So when are you arresting him?" The officer hesitated. "We need to do a little more due diligence before we make an arrest." I shook my head. "Unbelievable. If it were me, I'd be in handcuffs by now." They didn't argue. I walked out of the station angry not just at Jake, not just at Sarah, but at the fact that he had even gotten this far. I pulled out my cell phone and called my parents. My mom answered right away. "Michael, have you talked to the police? Please tell me you're going to let this go." I laughed. "Oh, I talked to them all right. And now Jake and Sarah are being investigated. So, congratulations, Mom. Your golden child, he's going down," she gasped. "Michael, no, you can't do this, he's going to jail." "It's not my problem," I said. "It's his." And then I hung up. But I wasn't done, because now I was ready to ruin him. When I got home, I was still seething. My own brother had committed fraud in my name, tried to steal 20 grand from me, and when I didn't roll over, he ran to the cops with a fake story to pin it on me. And my parents, they still defended him. I wasn't going to let this go. I got the best lawyer I could afford. His name was Mark Henderson, sharp, aggressive, and the kind of guy who never lost. I explained everything to him, laid it all out, the fake loan, the police report, Jake and Sarah's involvement. Mark didn't hesitate. "We'll shut this down immediately," he said. "And once the police officially charge him, we'll make sure he pays for what he's done." I had never hired a lawyer before, but as soon as I heard those words, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: control. Within 24 hours, Mark had taken action. He contacted the bank, obtained official documentation proving that Jake had used my identity, sent a cease and desist letter to Jake and Sarah warning them that any further false accusations would result in a libel suit, and most importantly, he went straight to the police. I was sitting in my living room when I got the update. Mark called me, his voice calm but sharp. "It's done," he said. "The police have officially dropped the charges against you. Jake and Sarah are now the only suspects in the identity theft case." I closed my eyes and exhaled. "Good, not just good," Mark said. "They're in real trouble. The fact that they not only committed fraud but filed a false police report, that's serious. I wouldn't be surprised if they both end up behind bars." I grinned. Perfect. But just when I thought I had won, my phone buzzed with a text message. I stared at Sarah's text. "Jake's in the hospital." I wasn't stupid. I wasn't going to fall for some guilt trip. I ignored the message, but 10 minutes later, my mother called. This time, she was crying. "Michael, please." Jake collapsed. "He's in the hospital. You have to come." I hesitated. I wanted to believe this was another manipulation, another attempt to get me to back off. But something in her voice, it didn't sound fake. I sighed. "What happened?" she sniffled. "He had chest pains all night. Sarah said he was stressed, panicked. Then this morning he fainted in the kitchen." I didn't say anything. "Michael, please," she whispered. "He's your brother." That line didn't work on me anymore, but against my better judgment, I grabbed my keys and drove to the hospital. When I got there, I expected to see crying in the waiting room, maybe my dad pacing, but what I didn't expect, my dad wasn't there. I walked over to my mom. "Where's Dad?" She didn't look at me. "He's not coming." I raised an eyebrow. "What?" She let out a shaky breath. "He's done with Jake. He told me that if Jake was stupid enough to end up in the hospital because of his own mess, then he could handle it on his own." I blinked. This was the same man who had literally tried to bribe me into letting Jake go, and now he was washing his hands of him. Before I could answer, Sarah walked up. Her face was pale, her eyes puffy. He wants to see you. I almost laughed. Me? She nodded. Please, Michael. He's not well. I sighed, ran a hand over my face, then followed her into the room. Jake was lying in bed, and the fourth in his arm, his face looking more sunken than I'd ever seen it. He turned his head when he saw me. Hey, he muttered. I crossed my arms. So, what is this? A guilt trip? He exhaled. No, it's real. He gestured vaguely at his chest. Stress, anxiety. Doctor said I had a panic attack so bad I passed out. Heart rate went crazy. They thought it was a heart attack at first. I didn't say anything. He let out a faint chuckle. Pretty funny, huh? All this time I thought I could outsmart you, get away with it, but I ended up playing myself. I raised an eyebrow. You thought you could get away with it? He sighed. I don't know, man. I don't even know why I did it. He shook his head. I needed the money. I felt like the world was against me, and I thought I could take a shortcut. Like I always do. You mean like when you stole from your old job? Like when you let me pay your rent and then called me cheap behind my back? I scoffed. Face it, Jake. You're not a victim. You're just selfish. He swallowed hard but didn't argue. I leaned forward. The only reason you're not in jail right now is because the police are still working on the case. But you will be charged, Jake. You will have to face that. I know, he muttered. And I'm not going to save you, I said. Not this time, not ever again. He closed his eyes. I wouldn't expect you to. I stared at him for a few more seconds, then turned to walk away. As I reached the door, he called, Michael. The first stopped. I'm sorry, I didn't turn around. I just walked out. A week later, Jake was formally charged with identity fraud, attempted loan fraud, and filing a false police report. He got a plea deal, 2 years probation, mandatory financial counseling, and a permanent record. Sarah left him. She took the baby and moved back in with her parents. My mother begged me to talk to him, but I refused. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. Jake had spent his whole life thinking he could lie, cheat, and manipulate his way out of consequences. But this time, he finally had to pay the price.